Hello and welcome everyone. This is Phoenix with your Patriot Health Report for the weekend of July 20th, 2024. All the health facts you need to know for the Patriot on the go. Hope everyone is doing well, and as usual, I have Bob Gilpatrick from Boomers From Ever Young joining us today, and we're going to be talking about a pretty hot topic here. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of information we're going to share. The conversation may get heated, but Bob has the knowledge to let us know how to cool down if it gets so. Now, you'll understand all that in just a second. Anyway, Bob, how's it going? And speaking of heat, how's it going down there in Florida right now?
Yeah, things are going well down here. It is hot, a little bit hotter than usual, just by a couple of degrees, but it's enough. We've had a number of people that have had issues with the heat, including just the other night, I was in a restaurant and there were two women sitting at the table next to us, and one of them started to fall over backwards and almost looked like she was having a seizure. And her friend kind of grabbed her, and I was able to jump up and grab her also so she didn't fall on the floor and hit her head. But she was suffering from heat exhaustion from being out on the beach.
Wow.
And that's a very real thing down here in Florida, but of course, all throughout, parts of the world, in India and other places as well, have had a lot of trouble with very high heat this year.
Yes. Bob and I were talking about this and had decided to do this special on heat and, protecting yourself from heat injuries because, like Bob just said, all over the world, we're having record-breaking heat here in North America, in Europe. I mean, just incredible amounts of heat in places, extremes. And what Bob was talking about, there were over a dozen people, I think it was almost 20 people who died of heat-related injuries in India. And India is not a cool place, except up in the higher elevations. So this is a topic we need to know because you can, the combination of this, there's a lot of potential for cyber outages, power outages, grid failure through natural reasons for storms. And people in Texas still are without power, some of them. And so this is something everyone needs to know. It's a skill set that could potentially literally save your life or someone else's. Some of these things Bob's going to share with us. And this is something that I think is very timely and very needed. But anyway, Bob, you said you shared with us what happened in the restaurant. I actually heard, I was out 2 days ago because we've had real extreme heat in the Northeast here also. And I monitor 911, and I've heard a few heat-related things, or people passed out or whatever. But I actually heard a first-hand account. Somebody was driving, and they were going to the post office and drove by someone's house that they know this person. And the person was sitting there kind of with his head down and a weed whacker. He was sitting on like a step, and they didn't think anything about it, but they did their business in the post office, drove back by, and the guy hadn't moved. And they stopped and really looked this time, and his eyes were closed. He was like totally limp, and his weed whacker was sitting there running. And what happened, he succumbed to heat exhaustion and actually almost passed out, but sat down before he passed out, and then went unconscious as he was sitting on the steps, and the machine sitting there running and everything, and he was out in the blazing sun. He probably could have been it could have gotten worse if they wouldn't have seen and helped him. So anyway, please continue.
Yeah, and that's, if somebody passes out like that and is, lost consciousness, they're definitely in what you call heat stroke. Heat stroke is more dangerous than heat exhaustion. And, heat exhaustion is kind of the first stage that people will go into if they're getting overheated, and they might, get a headache or start to get nausea and feel weak and irritable and really thirsty. And if they're sweating very heavily, this is heat exhaustion. But if it starts to get worse, the person may stop sweating, their skin will become dry, and they might lose consciousness like that person did. And if they start to really get slurred speech and confused, this is definitely an acute emergency where you need to get the person, medical attention right away. And you absolutely, in both cases, want to help the person get into a cool place, to get out of the sun into the air conditioning, and start to help cool their body off, with cold towels, and also with air. So if you have a fan and you can blow the fan over the person at the same time, that you can actually spritz them with water, or you can put cold cloths. You want to be careful with someone who has lost consciousness and maybe wakes up, and you're waiting for the ambulance to arrive. Be careful about giving them anything to drink. And it's hard for people to swallow properly when they're in that condition, and could very easily start choking on the drink. Usually if someone has heat exhaustion and they still have consciousness and they're still sweating, they're able to drink. And so if all you have is water, great, give them water. But ideally, if you have an electrolyte drink, you want to give them that. You want to give them that instead. And people a lot of times don't have electrolyte drinks because there's too much sugar in them. But it might be a good thing, over the summer, to have some bottles of an electrolyte drink. Some people call them sports drinks, in your refrigerator in case you need it for this.
Yes. They also have, like in my some of my aid kits, I think in all my aid kits, I have hydration packets also, which are actually basically what Bob's talking about, but in powdered form, that you can just mix in a bottle of water and give to someone. And it's dry, it's stable, doesn't take up a lot of space. That way, as long as you have access to water and you have these hydration packets, you can achieve the same effect, if not better, than the electrolyte drink, the pre-made.
Yeah. 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 And very important, because where the big danger comes in is when people have gotten so hot that their body has released a lot of electrolytes, and electrolytes, control your heartbeat and your blood pressure, and also has a very big effect on your brain as well. So if people are getting a heat stroke, that type of an emergency can create significant damage and even death if people have lost that many electrolytes, and their heart is not going to work properly. So
very dangerous.
That's why you have to be concerned about it. But also people, can get very, very sick from sunburn as well. And sunburn is, can be anywhere from mild and, this is a little uncomfortable, all the way to where you need to get the person to the hospital.
Yes.
And sunburns can cause extreme inflammation, not only on your skin, but in the rest of your body. And so you have to be really wary of that. There are new sunburn drinks out there that are specifically for reducing inflammation, and you can do that with some of our powdered drinks. Phoenix, the Boomer Boost, and barley reduce inflammation quite a bit. And especially during the summer, you want your inflammation to be as low as possible in general. So if you do have an issue that suddenly elevates it, it's elevating it from a much lower rate to start with, and you're much less likely to have an issue with it. But you'll
Hmm.
also want to be aware, if somebody seems to be having heat exhaustion, um, and it's like, well, it's not really that hot. What's going on? Could be that, the person has diabetes. They're much more susceptible. Also, obesity makes people way more susceptible to heat exhaustion, and numerous different medications that people might be on. So
Hmm.
just know that if there is a person that seems to be having heat exhaustion, but it's like we're not really sure why, you want to know that could be because they have diabetes, and you can ask them that because they might also be having a blood sugar crisis.
Yes.
And um, so in this day and age, it seems to be more problems with heat and power outages and storms. And so we just need to kind of get up to speed on what to do. And you could easily save your own life or save somebody else's life. And if you're aware of what's going on, you can take care of yourself.
Yes.
And my chiropractor was telling me the other day he was working outside in his garden, and he all of a sudden he thought, oh, I'm acclimated to the heat, I can keep working. And all of a sudden he realized that he was getting heat exhaustion. He
Hmm.
started sweating really heavily, but he kind of felt cold. And he's like, oh, I better get inside. And he got inside, started sipping water, got into the air conditioning, cooled his body down with some cold cloths, and he chewed ice cubes, and he stabilized himself.
There you
But
go.
he was aware. And so
Yes.
if you're not aware, you might just keep on working, and the next thing you know, you lose consciousness.
That's the value of what you're sharing with us, Bob, because a lot of times, and I've just recently heard firsthand from a couple people, very fit, very physically active individuals who had heat exhaustion. And the reason for, because, hey, I'm strong. Hey, I'm used to working outside. Hey, I'm used to this. And they don't know the warning signs or the dangers. So you can have someone, Bob, who's like totally jacked, in great shape, outside all the time, and the next thing they have heat exhaustions because they don't know the warning signs, and that's something. It's self-management. And before we get along too far, I want to comment on a couple of things you talked about. You're talking about the sunburn. Did you know that a very good thing to put on sunburn if you got a bad sunburn, just like standard, you're at the beach too long, outside too long, and wow, this is really bad, kind of painful. Coconut oil. If you put coconut oil all over your sunburn and leave it on there, it will really relieve it. And sometimes it almost like reverses it. It's crazy how good it works. And the other thing about the towels, you were talking about putting wet towels on people. The exact location that's really good, everyone, is you take the wet towel, like Bob's talking about, and like a hand towel or a small towel, wrap it around the neck. As cold water as you can get around the neck, because what happens as your body circulates through as your blood circulates through your entire body, it will, go all around, particularly to your head, and right there in that small place, your neck, as that blood flows in and flows out, you're actually creating almost like a radiator on a car. And that cool cloth is absorbing the heat from your blood and cooling it. And it will really cool you off. And also on your head, but don't forget, don't forget, and you didn't mention this one, Bob, get out of the sun. Get them out of the sun. If it's either
Yeah.
you or a patient, or victim of this, someone having trouble, get them out of the sun. So anyway, I just wanted to throw those in there
Yeah.
before we got along too far.
Yeah. And if the reason for calling 911 is that the medical personnel have other ways of cooling the person's body that you wouldn't have. So they can use IVs, and especially if someone's heart gets damaged because of the heat stroke, they have to then go to some pretty elaborate measures to balance the person's fluid temperatures. And they'll actually can run a catheter into someone and then constantly cool the catheter, which cools the blood. And then they can also, in extreme cases, can cool the cerebral spinal fluid with an intervention. And they're doing that to prevent swelling in the brain. And the last thing you want is superheated cerebral spinal fluid filling and draining out and creating pressure in your brain. So that's why you want to call to 911, and if the person stops breathing, they can help, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
And,
very good.
some of the other things, Phoenix, during the summertime, people are much more likely to be exposed to bug bites and bee stings as well. And also caterpillar stings, so to speak. There are some caterpillars where their furry outside hair acts like a bee sting, and I've had that happen before.
Really? I've never
Yeah.
had that before. I've seen them, but then again, I usually don't carry them around or grab them. I just like, oh,
Yeah.
holy cow! Did not. That's
Yeah.
crazy. I know all kinds of stinging insects, poisonous snakes, poisonous plants. I did not know that, Bob.
Yeah, it was about 3 years ago. I was walking on a trail. We were doing trail hiking here in Florida, and there were lots of caterpillars in the trees, and they were really beautiful looking caterpillars. And as I was walking, I felt something hit the back of my neck. And I always, whenever something falls on me, I quickly react to it. And I quickly grab back there, and sure enough, it was a caterpillar, and I just threw it aside and not really thinking anything. It started to itch like crazy. And that reaction, it lasted for about 5 or 6 days, where my neck was really, really itchy and inflamed and red, as if I'd gotten stung by a dozen bees on the back of my neck.
Oh wow!
And so just be aware that can be the case. Caterpillars are cool, and people will, let it crawl on my hand, and, not so much. Certain ones can be very dangerous.
Yeah,
But you also, yeah, go ahead.
no, a weird thing happened to me, and people didn't believe it, but I swear it happened. Years ago, I had, and I mean this is a long time ago. I can remember it was on my right arm. There was a ladybug. Everybody knows what a ladybug looks like. They're orange. They have the black dots on them. I'm like, oh look, a ladybug's crawling on my arm, and I'm looking at it, and I felt something. Bob, I swear to God, this ladybug bit me. I don't even know they could do that. People like they can't bite, but I'm like, ow. And I flicked it off there, and within 30 minutes, my arm swelled up, and it was a ladybug. And to this day, nobody like, oh yeah, right, yeah, ladybugs don't bite. Guess what? I got bit by a ladybug. So anyway, I don't know why I guess I just had to sidetrack your train of thought. That was good enough, I guess. But
Well,
you made me think of when you said and the caterpillar, like, oh, a little caterpillar. I'm like, oh, a little ladybug. Yeah. And next thing, I mean, when I mean swelled up, Bob, it was like a goose egg on my arm. How weird.
yeah, yeah, and that can happen too from ants. There's, fire ants here in Florida that can cause extreme swelling and from their bite. and they're very, very uncomfortable. They create wounds, actually, when you get bit by them. But also tick bites. Tick bites can be extremely dangerous, depending where you live. In particular, I used to live in Westchester County, and I I got bit by a tick. And Westchester County is the county next to the county where Old Lyme, Connecticut is, where Lyme's disease started. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of Lyme's disease in Westchester. And I got bit one day, and the next day I had what was called acute primary Lyme. And I got so sick I couldn't stand up. And I called my friend who's a doctor, and she prescribed an antibiotic for me, a 10-day regime of antibiotics that I had someone go and get for me, and I started taking it. Within a couple of days, I was feeling better. But Lyme's disease isn't always something that comes on 6 months or a year later, where you start to lose your memory and things like that, or get tired. There's acute Lyme's disease as well from tick bites.
That's interesting. I actually uh, saw myself one time. It was a red triangle shape, and you know what I'm talking about. That's one of the indicators of a possible bite by a Lyme tick. It was triangle shape, and it was swollen, red. So I went to the doctor knowing that that's one of the signs, and I had been outside in the woods, of course, and he gave me the same thing. That 10-day, I don't even remember what the name of it was, but I was prescribed this super antibiotic that lasted 10 days. Because before that, they were literally taking people who would get that, and they would put them in the hospital on like an IV antibiotics into them. And I think they came up with this one. So I actually had that very same treatment, Bob, years ago.
Yeah. Yep. Bee stings also me very, very dangerous. I uh, worked a lot on farms and as a tree surgeon, and was always exposed to a lot of bees. And I would just kind of swat them aside. And one day, one of them got caught in between two of my fingers and stung me in between my fingers, and my whole arm swelled up. And it turns out I had developed over time on an allergic reaction to honeybees.
Oh, wow.
And it even shows up on a genetic test that I've had. And so just be careful, because even though you're not allergic to bees or yellow jackets, which are the ones that leave their stinger in you, it doesn't mean you're not going to someday. And so be aware of that. And if you do have a stinger that's left inside of you, try not to squeeze it with your fingers or tweezers. Because if you do and you squeeze it, it can release more of the venom. And so usually a stinger will come out if you just scrape it. They're not in there a long ways. And if you just scrape it, say with a credit card or even your fingernail, usually the stinger will come out without pinching it with tweezers and making the bite worse. And then you want to, of course, at that point, put some antibiotic ointment and some ice to keep any swelling down, and just be very aware, especially if it's a child that gets stung. And if they get stung on their face, particularly around their mouth or in their neck, you want to be very alert to make sure that they don't run into a problem where they have difficulty breathing or like that.
Yes, it sounds like our conversation is basically gone. Well, it's like heat and summer related problems. I mean, we're talking about heat exhaustion, heat stroke, but I mean, everything that we're talking about here, bees, caterpillars, all these things are warm weather related and fit right in with the topic. This is a little interesting thing I'm going to share with everybody. Some of the listeners of PIR have heard me say this before. There is a trick People may have heard of someone who may be called a bee charmer. People who can go up to a hive of bees with no protection, and it just seems like the bees don't bother them. And there's actually a trick to that. If you, and you can try this yourself, the next time you have a bee coming around you, like a honeybee or just any type of bee, envision, instead of freaking out and swatting it away, in your mind, in your mind's eye, envision the shape of a honeycomb. And everybody knows what a honeycomb looks like. Just think of that shape. I mean, not the whole comb and everything, but just that shape, that geometric design in your mind, and you'll find that bees don't bother you. And I don't know how this works, but this is a proven method. And for some reason, you get that vibe and you visualize it in your mind. You are instantly not a threat to them, and they will just usually just fly away. And I do that all the time. Bees will come up to me, and I'll do that, and I'll just look at them and say, "No, just go away," and they'll just turn around and leave. I never swat or freak out because I know that trick, and everybody can try that. And we have the learned behavior to absolutely freak out. Some people are like, it's a bee, and they start swinging their arms around and everything. That's really not necessary. But if you guys want to try that trick, and let me know later how it worked out for you. But it works for me. It's worked for years.
That's really cool. Yeah, it probably changes your pheromone emissions when you do that. And that's how bees communicate, is with pheromones. And if you can change your own pheromones with visualization, that's probably affecting them. You don't have to change it by much. Pheromones are very tiny and fleeting, but all insects, do that.
That's interesting.
Pheromones were discovered in 1978 by a guy named Wendell Roelofs, Dr. Roelofs, and he worked in the same research center where I worked with my father.
Oh, cool.
And he was trying to figure out how insects communicate, and it was kind of a mystery. And he won a substantial financial prize from an institute for his discovery.
You know what, Bob, real quick before we move forward, because maybe a lot of people, your first time listening, you don't know who Bob is. Bob, you just said you were talking about the research facility and where your father worked. Why don't you just briefly share with us basically a rough autobiography of your father, who not autobiography, but biography of who your father was?
Yeah, so my dad had a PhD in plant pathology, and when I was 11 years old, we moved to Geneva, New York, where Cornell University's Agricultural Research Center is. And so he was a researcher that helped with all different types of crops and trees and doing research on the pathogens that affected them. And he became very well known. He wrote books on this type of thing. And in 1973, while I was still in high school, he was commissioned after the Yom Kippur War by the Israelis to come to help them with agricultural projects in the occupied territories and other places in Israel. And so I got to go and live in Israel with my father, my two brothers, two of my sisters, one of whom was a student at the University of Jerusalem. She was doing a degree in Hebrew literature. And so I got to go around all over the Middle East at that time with my father and the scientists from the Weizmann Institute of Technology, and participate in these studies that were being done. It was quite interesting.
Yeah, fascinating. I'd heard that before, but you know what? Since you were mentioning your father, again, I know there's new people listening, and it's really a great story, cool story, and Bob's background, we won't go into right now. Maybe some other day, is just as varied and with a lot of experience. And Bob's done a lot of things in a lot of places in the world. And of course, the big one that we all know of, founding and being the head of Boomers Forever Young and all the products. And it's no surprise, Bob, since you and your father worked, well, you worked with your father and you did all the stuff with plants, that you're into natural based nutrition. So no surprise there because you learned, firsthand from your father and other people the value of what nature can give us and how that can be converted into very useful things for us. So anyway, didn't mean to divert everything there, everyone, but credit is needed where credit is due, and I think your father, and the example he gave to you, that you could follow. You know what they say: the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. No pun intended. Okay, but it's true, and here you are. Living the same values and inquisitive, inventive nature of your father. So anyway, okay, I'll stop right now. So please continue.
Yeah, so I think another real important one to talk about is that there's an issue with seasonal depression, and most people think of it as seasonal affective disorder, which happens in the wintertime from lack of sunlight. But you also have this happen in the summertime.
Really?
And it's
I did
uh,
not know that. Yeah, okay, I'm listening intently. You're telling me something I had never heard before. Please continue.
yeah, so a lot of it is linked to frustration and irritability. And it can be, from fatigue and discomfort from the heat. Um, Seasonal allergies can cause this, and also changes in someone's routines. So, for example, in the summertime, kids are home, from school, which might change things both for them and for their parents. The kids might be away from their friends, or they're going off to camp and might not be doing well. So any time there's a change in routine like this can be, a cause. And then just in general social anxiety that this change can bring about for people. And so one of the good things you can do, especially for children, is help them with a routine. And if they're really having a problem, of course, you can get them professional help. You can also help them to keep a mood journal. How are you feeling? Especially in the morning. How are you feeling this morning? And help them to reframe things. Well, I'm kind of sad because I haven't seen my friends from school, and um, and you can have a talk with a child and say, well, tell me about your friends. Which one were you thinking about that you miss the most? And tell me why. What do you really like about them? And don't try to bury it, but let them express what they're saying. And then offer a suggestion, an auto suggestion of sorts that might be a reframe that says, well, it's only going to be, another few weeks before school starts back up again. You get to see them. But in the meantime, do you think that we could be happy right here today because we're going to be going to do this? Yes, it's different, but you'll be able to make some new friends and just use a reframe that can make all the difference in the world.
Yes.
And really important to know that a lot of kids don't do that well in the summer because things aren't as structured as they are during the school year. And they also may not be quite as alert and aware. It's more playtime, so they're a little more reckless, and they're doing things that aren't necessarily as safe. So you want to watch out, particularly with water activities. A lot of drownings happen during the summertime, both for adults and for children. You want to be very careful in the water, especially if you're going into the ocean. You want to be aware of rip currents and how to swim to the side before you come in, and also what might be in the water. Down here,
Mm-hmm.
we have stingrays and sharks, and people that go in the ocean here in this part of Florida learn to do the stingray shuffle, where instead of picking your feet up while you're walking in the water and not step right on a stingray that might be partly under the sand, as you shuffle, you are going to you're going to hit them, and kind of they'll quickly swim away if you bump into them.
You
But if you
know,
step on them, not so much.
yeah, there was a guy. I can't. You would probably. I know someone listening right now will immediately say his name. I can't think of his name. He was on television many years ago down in Australia, he and his wife, and he was a naturalist, and they would go out and examine. He would catch animals and stuff. He caught a stingray to do a recording for one of his television programs, and the stingray killed him. The tail actually flipped up and got him in the heart, and the man died from it. I can't remember. I can see him.
Yeah,
He had blonde hair,
Irwin.
bangs. You know who I'm talking about? What was his name?
I think their name was Irwin,
Irwin. That's
the
it.
family name. Yeah,
Yes, Steve Irwin. Was it Steve Irwin?
I think so. His
I don't know.
family still has a show.
Okay, I did not know that. I
Uh,
don't watch TV, but
uh,
yeah, stingrays can be deadly, and there are other things in the ocean also. Most people have been stung by jellyfish, but there are in some areas, especially down under Australia, the box jellyfish, I believe, and also the man of war. Yeah, tell us a little bit about this because and this is a thing that can extend even into winter because many times people up here, in the north, Bob, come down to Florida in the wintertime and will get into the oceans. And there's things a lot of people, I mean, you're right there on the ocean. Some people grow up on it. A lot of people aren't aware of these things. So I would classify these as summertime dangers also, without a doubt. So, expound a little bit more on what people should watch for. And I'd never heard of the stingray shuffle. I didn't really care when I was down by. I didn't know. I was living down in Savannah.
yeah,
We go on the beach, man. We just stomp around, do whatever we wanted. We didn't know any better. But I did get
yeah,
hit a couple times with a jellyfish. But anyway, please continue.
yeah, yeah. So, what to be a person who's helpful during a potential, issue in the summertime when it comes to the water, you want to be sure just to do the basic things that you and your children have had swimming lessons. If you're going to go swimming in the ocean, you want to be sure that you can swim pretty well, because if you get caught in a rip current, you're going to have to swim sideways a distance and then swim back in, and you're going to be getting carried out. And there may or may not be lifeguards to come and rescue you. And down here in Clearwater, St. Pete, there are people that drowned every single year. Multiple people drown in the ocean here in the Gulf of Mexico. And you also want to make sure that you know how to do CPR. Preferably, if you can become a good enough swimmer that you, in the absence of a lifeguard, can make an ocean rescue because you're strong enough to swim out, grab a person who's floundering, move them to the side, drag them back in, and you might just save a life if you have that capability and know how to do CPR in case when you get them back in, they're not breathing. But also, it's not just the ocean, Phoenix, it's swimming pools as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you have drownings in swimming pools. In Florida, they use swimming pools year round, but in the north, they come out, they're swimming pools, they uncover them in the good weather. First thing you want to make sure is that if you have children that are going to swim, that your drain you have drain covers, because if you have a drain that's not covered, a child's hair can get caught in that drain, their swim trunks can get caught in the drain, and it can hold them under the water. And so that's the very first thing that you want to do, but also make sure you have a perimeter where other children can't get to the pool at a time when you're not there to supervise. Be very careful with jumping and diving. Make sure there's life jackets. Make sure you have rescue equipment nearby, and absolutely, have your children have swimming lessons and know how to take care of themselves if they're going to be doing these types of activities.
Mm-hmm.
Also have other things too, is you just want to be careful. A lot of people will have cookouts in the summertime.
Oh, there you go. There you go. That's a big topic because right there, I've experienced and actually responded to some injuries related to this. So please go on.
Yeah, so you can easily create little mini explosions, with your cookouts if you're not, experienced and know what you're doing with either briquettes or with a gas-powered grill. Just have to really know what you're doing and be sure that you don't hurt yourself or other people. And you also want to make sure that if you are the cook, a lot of times when people say, okay, we're going to barbecue, well, it's a person that's running the barbecue that never cooks any other time of the year. They buy takeout food, someone else is the cook at the house, but it's like, okay, well, I'm the barbecue man, right? Well, the barbecue man might not know how to properly prepare and cook food so people don't get food poisoning from it.
Yeah, very
And
true. People undercook things all the time. So yeah, it's a big
yep,
issue.
and part of your first aid kit should be some activated charcoal, whether it's in powder form or pill form, really can help people that have gotten food poisoning to avoid a trip to the hospital,
Yes.
or help them enough so if they still have to go to the hospital, that it's not such a life-threatening emergency.
Yes. And the way activated charcoal works, everyone, it's very porous. If you look at it microscopically, there are pores all over, and basically it becomes a receptacle for the poisons to actually enter into. That way it can be passed through your body. That's how the charcoal works.
Very good. The other another thing to be aware of, and awareness is always good in these regards, is people tend to get kidney stones a lot more during the summertime.
Really?
And
Oh my
yeah,
God. Okay, hang on a second. Let me think about this. Kidney stones in the summertime. Okay, I can't
yep.
even imagine what would cause this. Please tell us. That's just fascinating.
So about 80% of all kidney stones are related, or they're calcium based. And during the winter time, our bodies produce more calcium. And that is when kidney stones can start to develop. And over a few months' time, they'll develop, and that's when you run into a problem. The kidney stones started in the winter, but it became problematic in the summer. And kidney stones can be extremely debilitating. People will get very sick to their stomach from kidney stones and can become dehydrated. They can be laid up in bed for days, and they think quite often that it's something else. I have, food poisoning, for example, or some other issue. It's very hard to know what is causing pain that's in your abdominal cavity area and in your thoracic cavity, because there are many organs and glands that are stacked on top of each other in that area. And in order to figure out if it's a kidney stone, you are probably going to have to be under the care of a medical professional. And they do have techniques to help with that. They have medications that can relax the duct that the kidney stone is trying to pass through, and they have good pain medications as well that can really help somebody to be a lot more comfortable during passing of a kidney stone. And just to be aware. So if all of a sudden here you are, you wake up and you've got this pain, and you're not sure if it's a stomach pain or what it is, just be aware it could be a kidney stone.
Wow.
The other thing is, Phoenix people tend to do more gardening during the summertime,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what is it that can possibly, come about because of gardening? Well, one of them is poison ivy, right? Poison
Mm-hmm.
oak.
Yes.
And it's not just the summertime too. Be aware that you can get the worst cases of poison ivy in the winter, because there's just as much of the poison in the roots and the vines as there is in the leaves. And so if you're out and about and you don't realize that there are these dormant vines that are wrapped around trees or in the ground, that you can get really bad case of poison ivy in the winter. And but certainly in the summer is when you're more vulnerable to it. And a lot of people are not allergic to poison ivy.
Yeah,
But
I'm one of those. I am one of those, and
yeah,
so is my son. Literally, Bob, and I can take poison ivy. I'm one of those weird individuals, everyone. I can take poison ivy in my hands, rub it between my hands, get all the oil on my hands, and rub it on my face, and nothing happens. I can, and I've done this in front of people, and it absolutely freaked people out. Pull poison ivy leaves off, put them on my mouth, chew them up. I can swallow them. Okay, I've been that way all my life, but please do not try this at home. Don't do
Phoenix,
that.
when you were a child or at some point in your life, did you eat a lot of goat cheese or drink goat's milk from a farm or anything?
Well, I actually did. Goat's milk. I did drink goat's milk, and so yeah.
Yep.
I have to say, I had a friend. They had a goat that they were basically like, it was hippies. If I
Yep.
remember, they were like real hippies, and they had goats. They would milk the goats. I would swing by and see them, and I'd always get like sometimes a quart jar of fresh goat's milk,
Yep.
and that's what I drank.
That's why you can do that. See, goats love poison ivy. It's like catnip to them.
Ooh,
And
well,
so they'll,
okay.
yeah. And so if you put a goat, on a farm, they'll eat all the poison ivy first before they eat anything else.
Well, you know what? I'm a Capricorn also, so that's a goat. Kind of a sea goat. So, well,
There you go.
so was it the goat's milk or was it the Capricorn? What is this?
Yeah.
Oh my
It's
God!
probably a mixture of both.
What a quandary.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
But goats are like, animals, including goats, have different enzyme systems than humans. And when you drink a goat's milk from goats that have been eating a particular type of poison ivy from a particular region, you can become immune to that poison ivy. And but you want to be careful because there's over 300 different types of poison ivy.
Hmm.
And if you're, even if you're from Western Pennsylvania and you've never been to West Virginia, the poison ivy is different. And you want to just know that as you move from region to region, the poison ivy is different. And you might be immune to it in one region or another, but it's unlikely you'd be immune to all 300 plus kinds of poison ivy.
Fascinating. I didn't know that either. You already like
Yep.
3 or 4 times on today's Patriot Health Report. I've learned something. I do every time, but please continue. We have a little over maybe 10 minutes or so to go. Yeah, Bob. So you know.
Okay. So another good thing about knowing things about poison ivy is there's a really good antidote that quite often grows nearby poison ivy, and it's called jewelweed. And jewelweed is a very succulent type of plant. And if you can learn to identify it, which isn't hard, it grows along rivers and creeks and like that. And you can gather jewelweed, and it when you pull it up, you want to pull it up out of the ground, because the root system is very valuable as an antidote, and it pulls up a lot of dirt and mud. You're going to have to wash it off really well, and then you want to boil it. You want to boil your jewelweed for about 10 minutes, put it in a big pot and boil it, and then the liquid is where the antidote is going to be, and you can pour that into a bath, fill the bathtub up, add a bucket of jewelweed juice to your bath and soak in it. You can also take the root of the jewelweed and break it open, and there's a substance in there that's kind of like aloe.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a jelly.
Right.
You can rub that right on to the poison ivy. That was what the American Indians used as their antidote to poison ivy.
You know, they had a saying with the Native Americans that if you were afflicted by something, whatever it may be, within 10 paces of where that happened, there's an antidote. They were truly believed that for every ill that you had, that there was something in nature close by, because that's the way the universe worked. And oftentimes they're very true. Like you said, jewelweed grows near poison ivy, and that is evidence of their belief, what they told the settlers early on. And I tell you what, the interesting thing about the American natives, many of the settlers that came over, when they got really, really sick, they would go to the local village of Indians and have the medicine man treat them, because they had stuff and they kept it very secret. They'd have what was called like a spirit bag or medicine bag with them, and they had different things, but they would treat people and sometimes save their lives, where the European doctors that had traveled over didn't have a clue and couldn't help them. So, and it was all natural. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Very powerful information. I remember taking a course when I lived in Boston, and it was taught by a man with a master's degree in medicinal chemistry, who knew all the chemical configurations of every drug. He knew the chemical configurations of all the herbal plants that work to help with things. And he would do research, very high level scientific research with an electron microscope and all this. And he had a friend who was an herb doctor, a Native American herb doctor. And whenever he would make a discovery about something, he would always talk to the Indian herb doctor about it. And the way he would present the material to us was, well, I discovered this and we did this, and we deciphered the chemical configuration and we figured out how it was working. And then the old Indian herb doctor confirmed it. Mm-hmm. And he always had that as his final confirmation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I tell you what, they were. I mean, there are all type of historical accounts where people, like even some like high-level officials, their children or themselves were extremely ill and they couldn't be helped. They went straight to the local Indian medicine man. And again, many accounts of lives being saved. And there were also English and French physicians who tried to find out from the Native Americans some of these things, and they wouldn't tell them. They held that was like knowledge they held, and they only passed it down word of mouth and through teaching of the next one coming up. Fascinating culture.
Yep.
But anyway, yeah, all natural, all good. Let's see, where are we? We are approximately, we have like 7 more minutes, so please continue.
Yeah, so other things to really be careful of, especially with your children, but yourself as well, is when the weather is warm, people like to tend to get out and do things that they wouldn't do at other times of the year. One of them is riding bicycles. And the emergency rooms are filled with, during the summertime, with people that have been injured riding bicycles. And the statistics still show that people that ride bicycles, only 1 out of 5 wears a helmet.
Wow.
And this is really important, not only to have a helmet, but to have a helmet that is a good helmet, that is properly fitted. And the people at the bike shops, the good bike shops, know how to do this, because the companies that sell these helmets provide information and training on how to properly fit a helmet. It doesn't do a whole lot of good for a child to have a helmet that's too small or too big, and the chin strap won't stay properly, and they fall off their bike, and when they hit their head, the helmet gets jostled to the side and part of their head hits the pavement. And you absolutely don't want that happening to your child. If you've ever seen a person who has had a severe head injury in a rehab center, it's one of the most disturbing things that you will ever see in your life.
Oh, yeah.
Is to see a person who's had a head injury and is being treated and cared for by professional staff.
Yeah, that is. I can confirm that, and I'm sure many people listening now. Very true, Bob.
Yeah, and so first thing you want to do is set a good example. Be the one who has the properly fitted helmet, that always wears it, that insists on the other people in your family that are going to be going bike riding are going to do the same thing. And at the same time, stand guard about where the kids are going, what they're going to be doing when they're there. I was at a guy's house a couple of years ago, and he was there, and I knew one of the other men that was there, who was his insurance agent, and had advised him that at this new house he couldn't put in a diving board on the swimming pool, because the insurance company would not insure anything about him or his home if he had a diving board with his swimming pool.
Wow.
And so that was no problem. He just had his kids climb up to the second floor of his house, climb out the window onto an overhanging roof, and jump off the roof into the swimming pool.
Oh, my God. Oh, God,
Yeah.
Save us from ourselves. Okay.
Yeah. So you want to be aware where your kids are going, what they're doing, whether or not the parents that are there supervising when you're not around at the neighbor's house, what actually is going on.
Okay.
And
All right. Well, let me supervise here. Let me everybody out of the pool, because Bob, we got 3 minutes left, and we need to wrap this up. It's fantastic information. I learned so many things this time. I always do, but this time, man, you were just really pulling them out of there, things I learned. But anyway, why don't we close here as we normally do?
Okay.
We have some final thoughts from you. And also contact information. And everybody, you can go over to PatriotIntelReport.com. That's PatriotIntelReport.com. Click on the lady in the blue lightning storm on the left-hand side. Take you right to Bob's page, but he has additional info. So give us that info and final thoughts info and some closing wisdom from you as we roll out of here.
yes, so people can call us also. We're right in St. Petersburg, Florida, on Central Avenue. And if you call our 800 number, 861-4609, we pick up the phones Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 Eastern time. Call in if you have any questions, or if you need help getting some Boomer Boost or some barley or any of our other products, give a call and the staff will be more than happy to help you and answer any questions. Right now, we do have a great sale going on here on the 20th of July, probably for a few more days anyway. And we have a 25% off sale on our barley, both our Gladiator barley and our heirloom barley, and also our collagen powder, and also vitamin C. Vitamin C is very important for helping to convert the peptides, the collagen peptides, into protein in your body. So we put them both on sale together at the same time. Quick update on our Myotrol product, which a lot of people have heard about or waiting for. If you haven't already, the easiest way to do it is once you land on our site, after you go to patriotintelreport.com, go to the top left of the homepage and there's a search icon. Little circle with a line coming out. Click it, type in the word Myotrol, Myotrol, and you'll see a picture pop up. Click that, and then you'll be able to add your name to the waiting list. And sometime around the first week of August, we're going to have enough Myotrol for everybody. And that, Phoenix, I believe, is all that type of information. Summertime we're right in the middle of summertime. Depending where you are, it's going to go for a few more months. And always good to have knowledge and be alert. I mean, just 2 nights ago, we knew right away that this woman who had fallen at the restaurant I was in needed help, and we were able to get her help right away. And you want to be that person who's there and ready and willing to give assistance for the types of things that occur, more often during the summertime.
Very true, Bob. All great information, fantastic information. And yeah, like Bob said, you want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Bob, thank you so much for sharing all this with us. As always, you blow my mind and bring us new information. I really appreciate it, sir.
My pleasure, Phoenix. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. In 2 more weeks, we'll do it again, everyone. And so that is it for the Patriot Health Report for this weekend of the 20th of July. Everyone be healthy, be well. Give Bob a call. Check that website, patriotintelreport.com. Click on the lady in the blue lightning storm on the left. Until the next time, everyone be well. And Phoenix and Bob out.